Okay, here's the deal. We are constantly told how to prep for our D&D or our tabletop role-playing games. Do this, do that. You need to organize. But the idea of organization is just a lie we keep telling ourselves. It's this ancient idea that if we just find the right system, everything will just fall into place. So we need to learn how to organize so we don't have to organize, because every new system just piles onto the mess. These systems are not getting rid of the chaos. They're just renaming it and putting it in different folders. I remember as a kid sitting at my Apple IIc trying to play Zork, back when they told us computers were going to eliminate paperwork. That was the dream. No more forms. They would stop sending us junk mail. Just clean digital freedom. And man, that aged terribly. Because now we have more paperwork than ever. Computers made it easy to generate everything. Lists, spreadsheets, maps, invoices, PDFs, half-baked novels, and whatever weird thing we accidentally printed in full color that drained our last $60 ink cartridge. And speaking of ink, every single house has like 4 printers. 1 that works, 3 that don't. And no one knows how to get rid of the dead ones. Well, at least environmentally. So they just sit in our garage like cursed relics. And we say, yeah, I'm going to deal with that next weekend. And it's been like 7 years. The point is we print more stuff to manage the stuff. And then we build more systems to keep that stuff organized. Google Docs, Notion, OneNote, or whatever the hot new productivity thing is. They all promise the same damn thing: clarity, structure, peace of mind. But most of them are trying to make your ideas fit their shape. And this is where D&D and tabletop role-playing games start having a problem. Because our campaigns don't play nice with structure. It doesn't have a nice beginning, a middle, and end, unless you want a railroad, and we've all decided you don't. Tabletop role-playing games are a pile of chapters written by a crazy person and then rewritten by 5 other lunatics who all have different goals and they didn't get breaks. And you're trying to track a bleeding world of villain that doesn't shout their plans. 5 characters think they're the main character. 3 dungeons, a crumbling town, 2 noble houses about to go to war, and a blacksmith named Jim, who the party just decided, for some weird, strange reason, that's their new best friend. And that's chaos. Beautiful, brilliant chaos. But chaos all the same. So what do? You want to make better stories, develop campaigns that hit harder, last longer, feel richer. We all want to be that kind of DM people talk about like a myth. Oh, you played one of their games? And suddenly the room goes quiet. But you can't get there if the tools you keep working with are against you. Google Docs is built for linear writing. Start at the top, end at the bottom. But a campaign doesn't work like that. Your notes are a murder board. They sprawl and loop back and turn, and you have to tear them up and redraw them every session. So if this feels like nothing fits, that's because it doesn't. Not in the system they gave you, and that's what we're here to try to fix. Chapter 2, campaigns aren't linear. Campaigns don't move in a straight line. I don't care how well you've planned it. The top to bottom strategy doesn't work. The story doesn't come at you neatly. It doesn't say, here's Act 1, here's Act 2. It shows up sideways, twisted, and always in the wrong order. And every time you try to force it into a structure that doesn't fit, something has to break. And that's what nobody tells you when they hand you the little template or the prep guide or some fancy dungeon planner with boxes to check off. They're all designed for stories that you're not telling. And you're not writing a novel. And it would be cool if you were shooting a movie, but you're not. You're running a world with so many moving pieces. And those pieces don't care about your outline. The players pull in directions you never expected. You drop a name you made up on the spot. Damn you, Jim. And now they want to follow that thread for 4 sessions. Something clicks or it doesn't, and suddenly your entire arc is sideways. And if you try to push through like nothing changed, you lose them. And if you throw it all away, you end up losing yourself. So most DMs just stack on more tools, more folders. They try to add another timeline, looking for a new color system that spirals on their spreadsheet, some crazy new mind map, another app, something. And the whole thing gets really, really heavy. You're not more prepared. You just have the privilege of burying yourself. And being buried isn't helpful. Well, unless you're dead. And if you're dead, you just need to stay that way. The problem isn't that something's wrong with you. It's not your memory or focus, and it's definitely not your lack of creativity. It's not about needing to learn how to improvise better. It's the shape we're told everything is supposed to fit into. And that messes it up. And it's making it harder than it really needs to be. Remember, you're trying to organize something wild, like it's tame. A campaign won't sit still. You build something and it stretches or it shifts. One piece leans into another, tightening the thread where you didn't expect. Something happens, and it might echo 3 sessions later. And you can't box that in. And honestly, you really shouldn't. So the easy answer is to stop trying to tame it. Stop thinking it needs to be clean to be good. Connections, yes. And that's the difference. Chapter 3, stop trying to clean the mess. Everyone thinks the goal is to clean the mess. It's not. We need to put our arms out and embrace the chaos. Your campaign is always going to be a mess. Accept it. You're building something that grows in every direction, past, present, sideways, backwards, underneath. So trying to keep it clean, it's just a fight you're going to lose over and over and over again. You don't need to control it, but you need to see it. This is why I don't think a module or a campaign book will ever hold up against something you built yourself. They hand you all the pieces, sure. But they don't give you that random non-player character, some guy named Jim covered in soot hammering away at his forge for no reason other than he exists. And when the book doesn't know what to do with Jim, when he's not part of the main plot, you either push the story back towards what's written, or you do what honestly I think you should have done from the start. Make your own campaign. That way, Jim matters. And so does everything else. We need to find a way to lay it out where you can spot the overlaps, to see the places where one thing bleeds into another, and suddenly everything matters more than it did 5 minutes ago, or 5 days ago, 5 years ago. That is the pressure of your game. And you're never going to see that pressure if it's buried in folders in a 300-page hardbound book with epic drawings. If it's tucked neatly into little boxes, and you haven't opened that in 6 sessions, or you haven't read page 200 yet. You can't see or feel the tension. You need to figure out how to make a space where the mess can breathe. It has to be subtle enough to spread out, easy to use, and mutable. Enough to rip apart when things shift, because they will. It must follow the KISS, keep it simple, stupid principle, or you'll ditch it by session 2. I don't try to map the whole campaign at once. I pick a thread and I pull. It's not tidy, and it doesn't lock anything down, but I just feel where it's already moving. And once you can spot the pressure where things start leaning into each other, you don't need a flow chart because you're following the tension. It stays alive because it keeps shifting. It works because it doesn't pretend to be finished. Chapter 4, structure without structure. This is it. This is what a finished weave looks like. It's not a plan, it's not a brainstorm. It's a clean, usable, repeatable format. At the top of every page in bold type, I label what it is. Is it the whirl wound? Is it the slow burn? Is it a character weave? Or even is it one of the multiple present weaves? Right underneath that, I add a short 1 or 2 word description, like Waterworld or the blood census we did way back when. something sharp, something that tells me what I'm holding without needing a second glance. We put a circle on the right side of the paper. This will become more important as we go along. But off to the left side, going straight down a vertical column words are hard, are the 6 questions. Same order, same format, typed or printed, clean. So it's fast to read. Each question is linked to a number, and that number appears around the edges of the circle, like a clock, 1 to 6. Always in the same position. The numbers stay. The text stays off to the side. The circle is always readable. Here's what's on the left side of the page. Number 1, where did it come from? This is the origin, and we don't need a full timeline, just enough to explain, to make you remember where this pressure started. Number 2, what does it want? Everything that acts has a motive, even a place, even a force. The direction is a thing pulling. 3, what threatens it? Could be people, faction, natural decay, history, weather, defying law, it doesn't matter. But you need to think about, how could this be shut down? Number 4, what is it connected to? List everything this idea touches. This needs to be big ideas or small, but these connections are important. This is a great way to see threads. This is your bread and butter and the easiest to see. Number 5, how is it changing? Ideas shift. They react to pressure. They evolve. And last, number 6, what happens if it wins or loses? The consequences. If this pressure succeeds or fails, how does it change for this weave? Then, underneath the circle, underneath all this, at the bottom of the page, I give the backstory, as if I'm going to tell you what the weave is. Maybe lore, maybe personality, but always this is the circle story. And then if you have to, you flip the page over and give in more information if needed. Notable things that are not that important right now to the weave, but might be cool to explore later on. Maybe the name of a tavern in a town, even though nothing important happens there. This is where your notes live. If it's an NPC, if they're important enough to get a circle, they're definitely important enough to get an NPC character sheet. You'll thank yourself later for keeping track of these things. And once I've got the whole thing filled out, questions, ideas, backstories, stats if needed, I print it. Always. I type everything because my handwriting is garbage. And playing with font size lets me keep it all fit on the page without cramming. Then I do one more thing. I assign it a color. I colored the entire circle. I fill it in edge to edge. That color tells me what the weave is. Is it a whirlwind, a character weave, a slow burn, or is it present? This will become really, really important when we talk later on in chapter 8 of this video. Because if I see red, I know it's the villain. I don't even have to guess, because the color is doing the talking for it. And every weave that matters goes through this process, not because I'm chasing perfection, but because I want to see everything clearly when it starts overlapping. And that only works if each piece is clean on its own. We're going to build this together. But now you know where we're aiming for. 1 circle, 6 questions, typed, colored, labeled, printed, and now it's ready. Chapter 5, Building the Weave. Okay, this is where it actually happens. You've seen the finished page, the nice typed version with color and clean lines. That was chapter 4. But this is how we get there. And I won't lie, this part is chaos. Well, it's chaos for at least me. Sometimes it takes me days. Others, I wrestle with this for weeks. Occasionally I start over, scratch out answers. I get halfway through and realize the core idea just doesn't hold up. So I scrap it and start over. My goal is to force my crazy ideas onto the page, even when it gets ugly. And sometimes I take a rough idea and I ask my friend to help. That friend is AI. I might need better friends. But before AI, this is what I would do. I would take a blank sheet of paper and start working on a specific weave. I keep thinking how this is going to look when it's all done. A circle on the center right side, numbers 1 through 6 around it, same spot every time. Down the left side, I've got my 6 questions in a vertical column, and it's always the same 6 questions. Always the same order. I use a printed template because you will see my writing is bad. Not third grader bad. Okay, maybe worse than a third grader's, but my goal is not to answer the 6 questions. Well, at least not yet. I think about all the pieces of the story. Some are half-baked, some are stupid, some based on nothing, but in the process, my little weave baby starts to emerge. This is the scaffolding for my backstory. Sometimes at this point, I start a new paper because I'm getting confused. I use different colored pens and markers so I can visualize how I push life into whatever I'm creating. But I start here because the answers live here. They're buried in those finite details, those stupid ideas. And if I don't know what happens yet, I can't know what pressure it left behind. So I write badly. In this example, we're making the world wound for my water world. Then I'm writing big ideas that I can build all the details on later. Like who survived and who didn't. How the elves adapted and the half-legs all drowned. What did the dwarves do when the mines filled up? I get granular and weird. I chase side tangents and let my imagination run. But something, somewhere in all of that, in those rantings and those scribbles, real ideas start to show up. And with this in hand, I sit down on my computer and I start writing. But I write to fill out my sheet. My backstory is there so I know to answer those 6 questions. Because now I actually know what I'm talking about. And I'm not guessing anymore. Just pulling real pressure from what craziness I've written. And sometimes I still hit a wall. Maybe question 3 doesn't land or question 6 falls apart. So I go back. I rework the backstory to fix those holes. This part is not sacred. I've learned how to throw out what doesn't work. Thinking that I should chase down some vague idea from 4 years ago clouds that process because if it was really worth anything, I would have finished it. Once I finally got answers for all 6 questions and they all make sense, I stop. This is my blueprint for that weave. Then it's ready to move to the final version. I polish it all up as seen in the last version in chapter 4. I print and drop it into the stack. But right now, this is where it lives. This is the scaffolding for the campaign. And the deeper I go here, the stronger the rest of it holds together. So make it messy. Write too much. Rewrite it again. Don't settle. The goal is really, really simple. Get everything that matters, every consequence, every shift, every scar onto this page. You're telling the story of this weave, but you're not really telling a story for D&D. Well, at least not at this point. Chapter 6. Make them touch. This is where the world stops floating in separate pieces and starts leaning in on itself. All we're doing here is looking. We've already built the weaves. They're printed, they're colored, they're labeled. The questions are all there. I have 6 of them. And again, they're the same 6 questions. And that's really the point. Because if every page follows the same format, then I don't have to memorize, what did I do last month? I can come back later, flip open a binder, look at the gnomes weave, and immediately spot number 4. What they're connected to. It doesn't matter how long it's been. It doesn't matter how deep it went in the backstory. I know because I can look at it. That number means something because the question never changed. So here's the trick. I go through each finished circle and I don't try to reinvent anything new. No new storylines, nothing. I just scan for pressure. So let's take a look at the 3 we just built for this campaign. A water world, which is our world wound. And in the back of my mind, I am constantly thinking about the local wound while wondering how this will affect my character's wound. Present weave, which we're going to talk about the gnomes, and our slow burn, which is the syndicate. There's a lot we could do, but for the example's sake and time, we're just going to look at these 3 weaves, each with 6 answers. And that's a total of 18. And somewhere in there, a few of those answers start to echo each other. There are so many combinations of overlap. It's kind of crazy. And if I did my math right, this is the number of varied connections. And no, I'm not going to try to say the number. I don't even know what that first number is. Now just think, we are going to add in character weaves and a hell of a lot more present weaves. So let's just say it's a buttload. Oh, trivia. A butt is a unit of measurement of wine. So a load of wine is a buttload. Let me show you how I find the overlaps. So let's look at the water world. Question 4. What is it connected to? This one's simple. It's connected to everything. It even says it on the sheet. So that is a constant because every race couldn't outrun the flood. Now I look over at the gnome weave. We know it's connected by question 4 to the world wound. But let's look at gnome's question number 2. What do they want? Well, they want to survive and they want to stand on their own. They've stacked their whole society on technology to make that a reality. So the connection between the gnome's number 2 and the world wound is that they pivoted in making things for a submerged world. Do you see? That's a match. That's one line. That's enough. Now I pull a little harder. So let's look at the syndicate. Question number 3. What threatens it? Well, the answer is scarcity. Anything they don't control. Back to the gnome weave. Looking for connections. That is question number 5. How are they changing? Well, they have a rebreather that works. It's ugly, loud, inefficient, but it's theirs. And guess what? The syndicate wants control of it for themselves. So they are pressing hard to either invent one for themselves or steal it from the gnomes. And guess what that does? This makes the gnome nation distrustful. I only need a few of these to start feeling the tension. You don't need every circle touching every other one. Just need a reason for this world to start reacting to itself. And that's where the 6 questions matter. If you only write down 3 things for one idea and 7 for another and 5 for a third, good luck remembering what's missing 3 months from now. But if every weave always uses those same 6 questions in the same order, then spotting the overlap becomes almost automatic. It doesn't feel like you're writing anymore. You start being a puppet master of those strings. Your job is to make things lean just enough, slightly, until something starts to move. Chapter 7, where to start. Okay, let's say you're sitting down and you want to build your campaign. So where do you start? Well, again, you start with pressure. And the biggest pressure is your world wound. That's your first circle because everything else grows out of it. It's the crack in the world. Once you figure out how that broke and why it never healed, the rest starts to come into focus because it's not just history. It's why things are the way they are now. If you can feel the pressure of that wound, then the 6 questions answer themselves. Once you've got that, once it feels real, then I move to the slow burn. And honestly, this is my favorite part. I get to ask myself, what snuck in while the world was reeling? The wound left space and something filled it. Remember, it's not always a person. Sometimes it's a system or a faith or a lie. Something that doesn't feel urgent. Well, at least at first, but gets worse the longer you ignore it. It's fun for me here because I get to be sneaky. You don't need the big, bad, evil guy. You need something that feels inevitable. Something that took root and just kept growing. And it feels like it grew in the shadow of the wound. You're doing it right. After the world wound and the slow burn are figured out, we need some present weaves. I don't build all of them. I don't have time for that. But I do start building the parts my players are going to care about. And usually my first ones that I build are the races. The elves, the dwarves, the gnomes, the humans, the halflings, whoever is still kicking around. Because the odds are the players are going to come from one of those groups. So I want each one to feel like it's already struggling, old and broken. That way, no matter who the players show up as, they're stepping into a world that already is leaning. Then I get into the character weaves. This is the one-on-one where I roll stats, figuring it all out. Again, not a party yet. Just me and the player talking about who they are and where they're from. I'm pulling pressure from the world wound, the slow burn, and whatever present weave that character grew out of. This is not balance. We are looking for tension. I want them to feel like the world is already pulling at them before they ever left home. Once I have all the character weaves, then I start building the prologues for each individual character, just them. Their first scars. The moment they realize the world's much bigger than their village, their family, and even them. That point when they're looking through the character's eyes for the very first time. And it's not about showing off your world wound or teasing what your slow burn is. It's about dropping them in the middle of it all and watching how they climb out. And as I'm working on their prologues, I keep asking a pretty simple question. How am I going to get them all together? Constantly thinking of how to get their weaves to overlap. I have to figure out how to get these insane 3-year-olds together, and convince them that wielding swords and casting spells as a team isn't the worst idea they've ever had. Chapter 8, the notebook. This is the part I rebuild almost every single session. This is the one-page system that keeps the madness at bay. Not because I love prep, because I need to see what's happening without flipping through 5 different pages while players argue with the door. So I take a big piece of paper, a legal size, or I tape 2 together, and I start laying out circles. Not every weave. Just the ones that matter right now. The world wound, the slow burn, maybe a town, maybe a character that's at the center of what's about to go wrong. I color them the same way as before. Red for villain, yellow for world wound, green for present weave, blue for character stuff, pink for new present weave things. It doesn't need to be exact. I just want to know what I'm looking at without squinting. And then I start pushing the edges, not clean gaps between ideas, just actual overlap. Remember the Venn diagram style? Yeah, we're going to do that, but with lines so we have room to write notes. Where 2 circles touch, I drop a word or 2 in that space. Could it be rebreather or murdered priest or question 4? Anything that tells me why these 2 things are leaning on each other. And I keep going. This isn't a polished reference sheet. It's a version of the world in motion. When the players shift direction, this page changes. Things get added or scratched out. When a villain moves, I draw a new line. If a town burns down, I make a note and leave the overlap. I don't put every detail here, just pressure points, the kind of stuff I know will pop again next session, even if the players forgot. This is where I write when I take notes during the game. I don't scribble in a journal, I write things in the overlap because that's where the consequences show up. And yeah, I remake this often. Every major session doesn't take long anymore because the weaves are done. I know what the 6 questions are. You see what's shifting. I'm not building the world anymore. I'm just tracking the damage. That's why this works. It's not just a system, it's a map of pressure. And when the world starts to crack, I can notice where the fault lines are. Chapter 9, between sessions. After the session ends, I don't start prepping the next one. Not yet. First, I deal with the mess, because the game always makes a mess. Someone says something unexpected, a new non-player character showed up like Jim, circles get pulled on, new weaves are added, maybe 2 threads cross that I didn't think ever would. And now I've got lines and arrows all over my session map, names in the margins, phrases circled 3 times, a few question marks here and there, and maybe even a little blood. But that's the good stuff. So I sit down with the chaos in front of me, the Venn diagram worksheet session map I was using behind the screen, and I start transferring. I grab the printed weave pages and I flip them over and I write. I write those notes. Our blacksmith, Jim, he mentioned his son and why I don't know, but he did. And that gets on the back of his weave. The priest said the fire's been burning lower, so that gets added to the temple weave, present weave. Maybe your rogue had a dream, so I captured on the back of their character weave. This gives me a few little breadcrumbs to drop or to clean up, just enough for me to see it next time and go, that. Because I'm not building a puzzle, I'm not writing a novel, I'm not writing things down, I'm laying a trail. And I've done it. And if I've done it right, a few sessions from now, I'll pick one of those breadcrumbs and drop it into the world again. And the whole table leans in. Not because it's a clue, but because they remember it. Here's an example. A small statue they saw in a town 3 sessions ago, sitting on the mantle of an abandoned house. Now it's in a dungeon. The same exactly. But it just happens to be 10 feet tall. And it's humming. And they just stop because they don't know what's important. Every little weird detail might come back. That's how you get a living world. Not one that moves forward because you said so, but one that folds back on itself, where consequences aren't about the damage or the loot, but they're about memory. And once you've got that memory captured, once the backs of your weave are holding all those ideas and those strange little tidbits of information, you sit down and you make your new Venn diagram sheet. Just like before, you use legal size paper or 2 pages, taped together. But now you've got your weaves and you've added new circles and you've added new lines. And those threads that you've been pulling on, you don't need to guess where the pressure is because it's right there because you've captured it in every single session. This is how I prep. I just pick the threads I want to pull. I pick the ones that are going to be fun this week or progress what's happening. And because I wrote it all down, I can. This is where it all comes together. And it's not in your mass amounts of notebooks, and it's not in the 15 books written of lore. It's right here at the table. When the game starts moving and your players start pulling on a thread, and that Venn diagram sheet, that's not prep anymore. It's the world. It's breathing in real time. It's alive. And while they're arguing about some stupid door, you're watching 3 circles overlap and you realize something just cracked. And you're not flipping through 6 binders, and you're definitely not trying to figure out a 300-page campaign book. You're watching pressure shift right in front of you. And because you wrote it down, you can react like it's always meant to happen. Now the players don't know what matters. They don't know what's just flavor or what's loaded with pressure. So they start leaning in. They get off their phones and they start listening. And they start playing like the world is real. In our next episode, we're going to stop reacting and we're going to start pushing. Momentum and Consequences is about keeping the story moving even when your players hesitate. It's about pressure that doesn't wait, tension that keeps building even if no one takes the shot. Because if your world's already alive, then nothing stays still. Remember, the warm below runs deep, and the fluffy spawn? We're all listening.